Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I'm with Chris Malgeri. He runs a online martial arts school program as well as a brick and mortar. But today, you're going to find out how he does $6,000 a month and more in revenue through his online program that he does completely remotely for people in different parts. Not people who are just like local to him. So, if you ever thought about running an online martial arts program and you're curious how other people may have done it. This is going to be the episode for you. I ran an online program during COVID, and I had one of the biggest online programs in the country, as far as I know. We did about 200K in revenue just fully online in a year and a half. But as COVID lifted, we focused back on brick and mortar. We actually still have it. Um, but it's, I think it does like, $2,000 or something. So it's not much. But I'm always shocked that people are still training in that class. I'm like, wow, there's still people training online full time. And it's with a live instructor that we hire who actually lives in another state. So super cool that he's able to make an income from it too. But Chris's main focus that he's going to talk about today is growing his online program more than anything. So if that's something you're interested in, this is the episode for you. So Chris, thanks for listening or being here and listening to us to me ramble. So Chris, tell me about like your online program. Like, why did you decide to even dive into that when you had a brick and mortar school?
Sure. So some years ago, when we had the motive collapse and my struggles for my gym in Metro Detroit, newly married, kid, and my wife and I decided, we need a bit of a change. Things were very challenging running the brick and mortar. We had a big school. We used to do seminars, every other month with internationally renowned teachers, bringing all kinds of people out. It was a great school. We had a big warehouse school. We had jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Filipino martial arts. We were kind of like the online university, right? Mm-hmm. And then that kind of died out. And I think that even the scheme of that has died out a little bit, where people are more focused on, you may have a Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu together, or an MMA school, or a traditional school, but that kind of broad scope where you see everything under one roof has kind of gone away a bit. And my wife got an opportunity we couldn't pass up, and that took us to Anchorage, Alaska, where she worked for a while. And
Wait, from what state? Where did you go? From where to Anchorage?
Right, Metro Detroit. And then we moved to Alaska, and
Okay.
she had an amazing opportunity for her career as a psychologist.
What was that? What was the opportunity? I'm so curious.
She worked as a contractor for the Air Force, so she was in charge of all of the psychological well-being and care for the pain clinic at the main hospital in the Air Force. So there's a big base called J. Bear Army Air Force. She saw a lot of people. I actually taught up there. We have a program we call Recovery Martial Arts. It's using martial arts as a way to reconnect with your body. So this is one of the courses we founded when we were now. Anchorage is a big city, but it's remote from the rest of the country, right? Many people thought we were moving into the boonies or something, which is not quite the case. But the access to martial arts is not quite as great as it is in the lower 48, as they say. So when we were up there, people still wanted to train with me. So we were doing a little bit, online, and we would do it over, this is pre-COVID, right? So we were doing what we could. We would meet on via Zoom calls or whatever. And that kind of started the ball rolling. And I was teaching, that started me teaching part-time, right? So I have 4 children. I'm homeschooling my kids. That became my day job, right? As I'm doing it. And it was a really great opportunity for me, right? I'm training my children's gym class, as it were, as me, right? Martial arts, but I handle all the homeschooling. And that got us involved with homeschooling associations, where a lot of times the homeschool families, especially if they're a little bit more remote, might not have access to martial arts training on the regular basis. So I was able to teach little seminars and workshops, but that got us thinking, this is a pretty good opportunity for us to expand in a new direction, right?
And how do you break into the homeschool system? Like, what do you? You're obviously your kids are homeschooled, so maybe you get it. But like, let's say someone runs a martial arts school, their kids go to regular school, maybe they don't have kids, and like, oh yeah, I would love to do programs or teach martial arts to the local homeschool kids. How does that work? Do they get PE credit? Where do you find them? Like, tell us more about that.
Okay, so homeschool is a huge it's a huge spectrum of options. You'll have homeschools that, for example, my children's homeschool is connected to the school system, right? So we have certain rules and responsibilities and things that we have to follow. And you'll have other people that are just purchasing courses and then doing it themselves. And then maybe they get accredited testing, or you have other people that just wing it, right? So there are all sorts of homeschool associations. Some are more academically based, some are more religiously based, but usually each state will have a main association that you can get information on how to homeschool your kids and what the rules and responsibilities are in your state. Alaska is very homeschool friendly because there are so many kids that are remote, where when we moved from Alaska, we moved to New York. New York is pretty restrictive when it comes to homeschool. They want kids in public school, right? Now that we're in Florida, homeschool is a great option, right? It's a really good thing down here. So we're involved with numerous homeschool associations from big and small scale. You just reach out to whoever's in charge and say, hey, listen, I want to, this is where the relationship building is so important, right? You want to build relationships with these different associations and whatever your offers are. Some people do a after school drop off kind of program. In my experience, homeschool tends to be earlier in the day that they like to do things, because by the time when normally we would drop a kid off for a 4:30, 5 o'clock kids class, homeschool's already done, right? They're already done with their stuff for the day, right? Typically the homeschool, they like to get their stuff done early, get their extracurricular done early. That's just the lifestyle. Maybe they have other things going on, who knows, right? So what you want to do is you want to really connect with those associations, and then you can start to open up. Now, what kind of instructor do you want to have? Just a very specific program where it can be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that works better for that group of people, right? Where we are, Florida has a really big homeschool component, right? There's a lot of people being homeschooled here because of the perceived value of public education in Florida. I'm going to say this as delicately as possible, right? So where I live, if you look at the ranking system, the local schools near me have a 2 out of 10 rating as far as their education system goes. I'm not sticking my kid in that, right? I have a degree. My wife is a PhD. We can handle the educational system, right? So what ends up happening is, what do you do? How do you get your kids out there? How do you socialize them? As an instructor, you go and you talk to these associations, and then you say, okay, listen, I've got this time, I can offer you these classes. And then you build your little network within the homeschool association. And it's sort of old fashioned, but homeschool is big on word of mouth. If you have a good product, if you're affable, if you connect well with children, mom's going to tell moms, dad's going to tell dads, it's going to blossom. Because like any other parents, A, they want what's best for their kids. But B, it's got to fit into their lifestyle and environment, right? As anybody that teaches kids for long enough knows, you have a couple different kinds of parents, right? You got your fly-by drop-off parent. They drive and drop the kid, dump them, and they run, right, to do errands. And then you have the other parents that tend to be a little more focused and a little more disciplined about what their kids are doing. Homeschool parents tend to be a little more focused. When we were in Alaska, our association gave us an allotment to use for extracurricular activities. So we could pay for guitar lessons, we could pay for other things. Out of the state allotment, every kid got X amount, I don't remember what it was, $1,500 to $2,000 per school year that could be used towards extracurricular things, because Alaska understood it's so important that kids are educated properly, right? So within each association, some are not accredited and some are. And those that are accredited or state sponsored, there is so much opportunity. And some, it worked out well for us, where when I was teaching and I had a small group up there, part of what would happen, and you got to check with your local homeschool association. I can't speak for anybody en masse, but they would give us an invoice, then that we would submit it, and then we would get paid, something like that, right? It all works. It's all money in the end, right? And you're providing a good service, and you build those relationships. The homeschool network, it's kind of like a modern version of just great word of mouth, right? The Facebook groups, you put your stuff up on all the socials, right? And when they find you or you find them and you connect, they're going to push you forward very, very aggressively because you are supplying their kids with the kind of the tools, techniques, training methods, the personal development, the character, everything that we know what we want to offer people. Now, that is a great vehicle, right? Because it's a really interesting and it's a really thoughtful organization. Homeschool tends to be, in my experience, anyway.
So how you like, let's say step one, okay, because this all sounds great. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, like you should have programs for homeschool kids during the day. Maybe it's not even you, the main instructor. Maybe it's like one of your junior instructors who like the opportunity to make more money, give more hours to. Someone you can rely on is going to give a good class, but like you can have something during the day, so it's not just sitting there. So I guess my question is like, okay, I'm in New Jersey. I want it. Step one, I'm going to find this local home and school association or homeschooling association.
Sure.
What do I do? Am I just Googling New Jersey Homeschool Association? Like, how do I attack it?
You can, look up Facebook groups that New Jersey, where your local area homeschool association. And
Okay.
then, to be honest, I have a social media manager who does a lot of this for us. We sit down and we created a plan. But like you're saying, you have a junior instructor, maybe you get them to do it, right? And that can be part of their project. But you connect with the local homeschool associations, call your local school district and say, okay, because generally the local school district, even though I homeschool my kids, they are registered in the school district as being homeschooled. So the school district is connected with the more, let's call it, accredited homeschool association, right? So you start there, and then you reach out to them. And what's your offer? What do you do? Do you do a free class, or do you do a 2 hour, or even like a 45-minute little intro? Hey, I'm going to do a quick kids self-defense, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of that, you get a free uniform if you enroll, that kind of thing. The actual advertising of it doesn't have to be too much different than you would normally do. What you're trying to do is meet them where they are. What time do they want the classes? And maybe some of the homeschool kids will show up to your regular kids program because it's still a kids school and they get to socialize. The only difference might be they might come to you and say, hey, can we pay for this out of our allotment in such and such a fashion? You might have to be a little bit flexible in the way your tuition comes to you, because a lot of times, like I said, we would have to invoice and the payment might be a little different. Who cares, right? It's 2 seconds extra work on your part. No big deal, right? Because you're connecting with a new community. Facebook groups tend to be super active, right? I know Facebook is a bit more like the parent portal more than it is like the young kids kind of thing. But that's who you want, right? I get a lot of interaction, a lot of questions, a lot of back and forth. And as long as you're staying up with your communication skills, you're in good shape. Don't discount the school system, right? Especially when you're saying, hey, just who do I need to talk to about homeschool association? They're going to give you a list of numbers and emails. You get out to them, figure out your offer, and then just like you would in any other program, you put it out there. You get 10 kids to show up for their free thing. What's your offer? Whatever you like to do, whatever you normally do. Whether you're giving them a free week, 2 weeks of free training and a uniform, whatever your thing is, and then you get the ball rolling. They homeschool parents, homeschool associations tend to be very receptive to getting their kids into other activities, because otherwise the kids stuck at home all day, and that can be no fun for the parents or kids. One of my favorite ones, and perhaps because she's now 5, but I like the parent kids, like the Pee Wee martial art class. And one of the things in homeschool, especially on a virtual scale, is I train the parents on how to become teachers, right? We call them assistant coaches, right? Because I don't want them to think they're actually black belts themselves, right? In any way. But you got a 5-year-old, you're in, Talkeetna, Alaska, right? With nobody around you, but we're connecting and we're meeting, and I'm telling you step by step, I'm teaching you how to coach and train your kid. We'll have our interaction, but that is one avenue, right? I have a lot of fun with that, where you have the kid come. It's basically a glorified tumbling class, because from a jiu-jitsu background, we're doing the rolling, we're doing the falling, we're preparing the kids, I'm sure you're very familiar with animal walks, the gorilla, and all that kind of stuff that kids really get into. And then you get the parents to become involved in coaching. And because of my wife's background in marriage and family therapy, we're really integrating a lot of what we would refer to as the partnering coaching, right? So sometimes, as you might be aware, it's hard for a kid to take instruction from a parent where they go see their instructor, their sifu, their sensei, their professor, whatever, and boom, it just clicks in, right? So we're trying to work on that dynamic to have the kids and parents be a little more receptive to giving and receiving instruction, and that tends to work out very well.
So, okay, so first step would be school district, because they'll have a list of people who are registered as homeschool education students. Okay, so maybe will they give you access to that list? I'm assuming not. Like, will you say like, oh, we'll do a martial arts program for them? Can you send them this email or something?
We have been able to send, for example, I'll send an offer out and then they will send it out on our behalf, right? But once you get to the Homeschool Association, then the association will work with you to get your offer out to everybody. You won't necessarily get a list of each individual member of the Homeschoolers Association, right, to send it out personally in the beginning. But then, like with any other advertising push, what's our goal? Build our list, right? We want to keep building that email list so we can keep connecting with everybody, right? So if you get to the Homeschool Association and said, hey, here's our offer, they might blast it out on their Facebook page. A lot of Facebook pages for homeschool page, they will allow you to advertise right there on the page. Let's say one of the ones we do here, they have every Wednesday, anybody can put out their offer, but only on Wednesdays, for example, because they want it to be more or less a community page, but you can put your stuff out there, right? Now that's a little catch-20, it's a little hit or miss. That's not a focus, but it's also free, right? So the few minutes that it takes you to schedule your post, so what, right? That's not a big investment of time and money for you, right? Then you get into a little bit more the association, and then you might work within whatever conferences that they do. Usually, we did this in Alaska one year, the Alaska Homeschool Education Association, right? They have a big conference every year. So we got a little booth, like you might do at a fair, or you might do at a community gathering of any kind. You get to the Homeschool Association, you've got your booth, you've got your programs, and you set it out that way. Usually it's a statewide thing, but if you could get involved with the state associations and you get a little bit of rapport with them, they're going to be very helpful in getting your message out to everybody. The other thing is, you can write articles and you can put up posts, sort of community service. Here's 5 steps in how keeping your kids safe when they're walking to school, right? Those kind of things that you're putting yourself as an authority, right, on their page. You're saying, I'm a martial arts expert. I know these things. You do a 2 or 3 paragraph blurb, something simple. Nowadays, a little video lesson that you can have them post up. Now you are getting yourself out there to the homeschool community as an authority, as a professional, as somebody they can trust to bring either virtually, in our case, or in perhaps in person. Right? It's a really interesting program.
Is there a way to become like the go-to, besides like, okay, maybe it's people saying your name all the time on the Facebook group, or maybe they got a couple of emails or something from the Homeschool Association, but is there a way to become maybe the certified martial arts PE credited instructor through a Homeschool Association? Like, we're like, oh, here's, like, they send out to everyone every year when people certify, oh, here's like your resources for local homeschool kids. Is that a thing?
Not so much, because every homeschool association is different. Now, for example, if you want to be considered a coach, or if you're a teacher in the program I'm in with my kids, right? I'm homeschooling them, but they still have to actively meet with teachers who are professional certified. They went to school, they're licensed in the state, right? So there's a whole range, right? I think the best way to sort of formulate yourself as the go-to person, because there's not an official, hey, this is the person, is to get sort of even if it's anecdotal, but get sort of that gold star seal of approval from the bigger associations themselves. Get the associations themselves to say, hey, Matt here, he's the guy you want to send your kids to in the homeschool environment, because some homeschool environments, basically you send in your paperwork, and this is really the downside of homeschool is, as long as you fill out your paperwork every year, the state leaves you alone, because maybe you have a religious exemption or something else, and you say, hey, I want my kids taught this way in this material. That's acceptable, right? Now, they might not get a high school diploma, right? There are rules in getting that. They might have to do a GED or something later, right? But I tend to focus on the homeschool associations that are connected to the state. They are accredited. And for example, when my kids finish, they'll have a Florida State high school diploma, right? So I'm really focusing on the ones that are accredited and connected academically, but you can get sort of a seal of approval, but to say, hey, I got certified, I haven't seen anything in that way, but you can definitely make yourself stand out as the one to go to. What I've noticed, and I think this is really where the fun part is for me anyway, is when you can get them the information, the content, and develop yourself as the brand. Say, I'm the guy that you want to bring your kids to for homeschooling. They're going to take that and run with it, right? Because then you're a name that people can trust. And I think that's very, very important when you're dealing with kids, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, and I feel like there's probably not a lot of competition for martial arts school owners or instructors who are doing this thing and attacking homeschool kids. Like, very few people actually do that. So now that and word of mouth in smaller communities makes such a big difference. It's like word of mouth in like a big city, not as much of a difference. Like, what I do is I teach martial arts school owners how to grow their schools without ads. So through what I call the Triangle Codex, which is through schools, daycares, and businesses. So those three areas. And sometimes people will ask me, they'll say, oh, I'm in a small town. Is it going to work for me? And I always tell them, like, it's going to work even better for you, because small town word of mouth is even more impactful, right? Now, if you're out in like a forest somewhere and like there's like farms everywhere, I don't know, probably still be good, right? But if like real rural, I don't know. But like if you're more like suburban or not in like a downtown, if you're in a downtown city area, like at least our schools, they don't need to market nearly as much. They just don't have to do a lot of these things, because people just walk by, they show up, they call the website, they have a lot more visibility. They pay for their marketing and their real estate, right, by their location. Mm-hmm. But if you're wanting to get into homeschool and you do a really good job with the first couple of members, they're going to know other homeschool parents. They're going to know other homeschool kids, and they're going to tell them about it. So I think if you want to sneak your way in, now that you gave us some strategies through Facebook groups, through Googling the homeschool association in your area and schools, I think that's a great first step. I guess the next part is, okay, that might be if you want to run a program that's homeschool kids in your local area at your brick and mortar school, or maybe you want to do it part-time in your garage or something. I don't know. But let's say you want to do it online, okay, where you have a much broader reach.
Sure.
How do you do that? How did you actually start that?
Well, interestingly enough, like you said, ours started because I had 3 of my kids in a homeschool association in Anchorage. And what happened was we would go to the, usually once a week, every other week, all the kids would get together and they do some kind of extracurricular thing. Then we started talking to some of the parents, and I was able to sort of branch into it. That way we got approval from the homeschool and said, hey, let's do a class once or twice, once a month, twice a month at, at the park or here or there. And that sort of grew, like you said, word of mouth. Now, if you're going to do something on a broad scale, what worked well for us and what is continuing to grow, and I'm having a great time with it, is how do you take the homeschool environment and turn that into their gym? Well, you're going to have a limited equipment, right? They might have limited space. They're not going to have the resources of coming to the coach. So what we did was we first figured out, okay, what's our program? What are we going to get? What we're doing is an interactive program where I'm not only working with the child on their martial arts skills, but I'm teaching, like I said, the parent to be able to become like the assistant coach and monitor what's going on, right? So we already had the inroad into the homeschool associations, And we were able to start advertise that through and say, okay, do you want a 30-minute, let's do a 30-minute consultation. Let's talk about you, your child's needs, how to set everything up. And then what we can do is customize this. You have a 10 by 10 room, you got 5 feet of space. What can we do? What kind of thing can we offer? You don't have any mats? You can go to Costco, 30, 40 bucks. You can get like, those puzzle mats you can just stick together. You can make this very cost effective. I'll start by showing you the basic movements and exercises, how those basic movements and exercises become the techniques, and how the child and the parent can train together in an effective way. So we have a product, right? We know what we want to get to everybody. Then we start putting it out through the Facebook groups, and we start putting it out through the associations in the way saying, hey, you can't get to a school? I'll bring the school to you, right? I will put the school in front of you. I will give you everything you need to go from rank to rank to rank, to belt to belt to belt, and how to go through everything. That gets a little sticky. As you know, online training, there's such a weird gray area in rank and everything nowadays. Some people have this, what's the McDojo term, right? People just get crammed through their ranks really quickly. How do you do testing and other things on a virtual scale, right? So what we've done is we created a system where you can go, let's put it in jiu-jitsu terms, like white to yellow belt. Here's the techniques. Here you have to know. As long as you can demonstrate them fairly well and you can move, you can progress through the ranks. Eventually, what we're focusing on now is creating central hubs where we'll go once or twice a year and have a seminar where people won't be too hard for them to travel and meet with us. Say, maybe I need to go to Alaska once a year. Everybody that's in the Homeschool Association, that's part of what we're doing, can do it. They can do their testing with me. And this way, at least once or twice a year, I can see you in person. That's a bigger commitment if you have a brick and mortar school. That maybe that's not as much of something you want to invest in. But for me, because my focus is working on the homeschool and developing the parent-child interaction, giving them a way to get that personal interaction, not only are we doing the virtual training, not only does that grow the library that they can come back and see the lessons over and over, but now I'll be in your general geographic area once a year. We can plan for it, whether it's, we're renting out part of a hotel, whether I'm renting out a school somewhere, somebody I know, and we can get together and we can connect in person as well.
Okay, that's great. So you'll kind of almost have them set up their own little dojo in their house.
Absolutely. And
yeah, very cool.
What can you afford? What can you do? If you tell me I've got 4 feet of space, maybe I need to focus more on a stand-up kind of martial art in the beginning. But
Sure.
if you tell me you can put a 5x5 or 6x6 set of mats out, I can keep you busy and safe teaching you jiu-jitsu or whatnot, right? Depending on what you want to do. It all depends on what you want. So this is where the sort of the boutique nature of it comes in the beginning, is I will customize it to where you're at, what you're doing. Who are the parents? Are the parents physically capable of training with their kids, or do they have some kind of impediment that would prevent them from being a good partner, right? Do I have a brother and sister that can train together, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, what have you? Or is that going to be a problem, right? So really, if you want to give somebody more of an experience than just, hey, buy my course and good luck to you, right? Send me a video of how you're doing. Then we have to customize it. We have to personalize it. And we have to have that, regular connection and interaction as best we can, as you would if you got a kid coming in twice a week, 3 times a week that you're seeing, right?
So will you mail them? Like, one of the things we did, and obviously, like, we kind of, we did this for a while during COVID and then took our foot off the gas. So it's been trickling away. So it hasn't been our focus at all for a while. But one of the things we did was we would mail them a uniform, a target, a pair of gloves. I think those are the things we would mail them. That way they could feel like they were training in martial arts. And we didn't mail it ourselves. We just set up drop shipping with the martial arts equipment provider. For us, it was like Asian World. And we had like a little spreadsheet we shared with them. And then anytime we added a new student, they would get a notification and it would say the sizes on there. And then they would just mail it to them. They would just charge our account and we would charge the students. So they would get equipment so they feel like they're training. And it wasn't just like them in shorts and t-shirts. So do you do something like that? Do you make sure they get equipment, or is that kind of things they do on your own? How do you usually structure it?
Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to make it as, ours is all about accessibility, right? Everything we do in Synergy is accessibility. It's access to training, whether it's, we do everything from, martial arts and life coaching and wellness and nutrition. So what is it that we're talking about? So generally, we'll make sure that everybody feels like they're a part of our group. And we have the training t-shirts. I like the dry fit ones, not tight, that's something comfortable for everybody to wear, so that this is what you wear, so that we're all one big happy family. And then what we'll do is we make our arrangements. What are we doing? Right? I'm a little remiss to say, okay, for example, I have a whole program where I work on Muay Thai, Thai boxing for children. Right? All my kids are learning Thai boxing. I love Thai boxing. It's a great thing, but the pads are expensive. Right? The things are expensive. So what we want to do is we have an incremental program where, like you're saying, yes, we generally do it like the t-shirt and the shorts, and then a less expensive pair of focus mitts or pads that somebody can get started with. But I'll make a recommendation, right? If you've got somebody, kids 14, 15, 15 can be big nowadays, right? 15 can be, maybe you don't need the small focus mitt. So we discuss what investment are you able to do right now, right? And then kind of move from there. Because a lot of times, especially you're in a remote place, getting equipment, sending the equipment, that can be a little more problematic than anywhere that they just have Amazon and you can get something the next day. So, but I do agree, it's important as a way to form community and as a way to bond with parents, teacher, and students. It is important to have kind of that cohesiveness, right? That's why.
And that branding, right? Like you have your brand too on all your stuff.
Everything's simple. Where that is actually, it's kind of a funny thing in the jiu-jitsu world right now. There's kind of a fight about it, right? Whether everybody should have the same uniform, everybody should wear it the same way, or you just buy what you want because it's considered a little bit old-fashioned. I think it's important that everybody dresses the same way. We build a sense of community, so you're in it together, right? I think that is super important. As far as business goes, it's important because you're trying to form your brand, and you're trying to make sure your brand is the top-rated, best-named, everything brand as it can be. Doesn't matter if it's Homeschool Association virtually. Doesn't matter if it's in place. How people see you is vitally important, right? So that if you have a good brand, if you have a good name, that's going to carry you a long way, especially if you have a decent product.
So let's say I get connected, like, okay, so let's say I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this online.
Yep.
And I'm going to do maybe start with my state or city, and then I might be able to expand over time.
Right.
Right. And like, okay, I'll just focus on homeschool kids who want to be able to train online. And then it doesn't have to be just your city or state. It could be anywhere. Right. But it sounds like I'd probably infiltrate the Facebook groups first locally and then kind of branch out.
Right. Well, mine was a little different only because we moved so many times. Right. My kids started homeschool in Michigan, where we started, because I'm running the gym full time. Right. My wife, in fact, in Michigan, my wife had her office in our gym. Right. So the kids are always with us. They're doing school at the studio. Right. So we instead, because we live not close, right, to where my gym was. So that made it easy. But that got us connected. Right. When we moved to Alaska, that got us connected. We moved to New York, we're the homeschool there, that got us connected. So that was easier to branch out. You can start sort of like top of the ladder, right? Find a national homeschool association that reaches everybody, right? Start there, especially if it's virtual, because who cares? I don't care where the kid is, as long as, since I do a lot of things more on the one-on-one and small group way, as long as you can figure out the timing and say, okay, this person is 4 hours behind us because they're in Alaska, 6 hours, depending on where they are. We for a while, before they went off to college, I was working with kids that are in Hawaii, right? That's a time difference, right? You've got to account for those kind of things, right? Especially if you're doing it this way. I like it because I like the connection and I like the personalization of the program versus just having an online library that they can access, which is important too. Especially, you need those resources for them. But if you don't particularly care, if you're not trying to get them to the school, right? Then cast a wide net. Go to the national association, the homeschool associations. A lot of times you may have to pay a few bucks for the advertising, right? If maybe they have a directory of some sort that you can get into. But if you can get, especially if you have a program, then going to those conferences also works out very well, right? Because then you can, who cares, right? Somebody's coming to the conference from Alaska, in my case, right? If you go to the main homeschool association conference, maybe, I don't remember where it is in this one year, so in Las Vegas, right? You go to that. The people that run the statewide homeschool associations, they are looking for programs for the kids in their state to focus in on too, right? So not only are you looking for the individual people, you're looking for who runs the homeschool association, because those people need other avenues, other things for their kids to do, right? So that makes them sort of do some of the work for you, right? So if you get a hold of, this guy runs a homeschool association in Florida State, and he really likes, I like your program. I think more kids should do this. Okay, there we go. Now I've got a great connection. This person is going to help me reach out to all these other families, because eventually that's what I need to get to, right? So you don't have to hunt down the family first, right? You can get some people to help you do the legwork if you can show them, right? Because one of the things that happens in homeschool is many people will try to sell their homeschool curriculums or programs, right? That's a huge thing. You have a lot of options depending on the states that you're in. But the other thing that they need is, what's outside of just the general homeschool? Well, what about martial arts classes, right? And if somebody like you come in, you say, hey, listen, I've got these classes. If you're in my area, if you're local to me, we've got a setup. It might not be 30, 40 kids a class right away, but if you figure out what's your number, what's at work. If I can start with 5 kids and then we build this up, pretty soon I've got an active homeschool component that's going on. So those dead hours of 12 to 2, or when nothing's happening, I don't know what the school's like, but let's imagine, right? Or if you, like you said, you've got a junior instructor who can come in and say, hey, let me crash this out for a couple hours in the afternoon, 2-3 days a week to start. Then you're filling some, hopefully, not dead time, but if you got dead time, you put the kids in there and you get them going. But you're not limited to that, because you can train anywhere in the world.
So tell me about the business side of it. So do you do a trial offer, or a free class, or a paid trial? What do you usually do?
Generally, we do, if it's all the virtual, right? Generally, what we do is we start with consultation. Because I want to get everybody set up and we're on the right foot and establish our expectations. Can you even manage doing a homeschool, right, program in your house, right? Do you have enough space? Where are we at? So I get a sense, and I also want to connect with them and find out what they're really looking for. Generally, we start out, we'll do a 1-month trial. If it's it might be 1 30-minute class or 2 30-minute classes a week for a month, right? And it can range depending on when their schedule is and how much they want to get out of this. Generally, what I do is, let's say you come to me, we do a 30-minute class. I will have written out for you in your inbox, as soon as the class is done, your workout plan for the week, right? So what I will say is, because I might not see every kid every day, ours is a little more one-on-one, like a private lesson program right now. So this is what I want you to do, and I base it off 15 minutes a day of training, right? Which doesn't sound.
Wait, can I ask you a question about that? So you're doing 2 private lessons a week for 4 weeks as their trial. So you're doing 8 free private lessons as a trial?
It's a paid trial. No, it's a paid trial, right?
Okay. So you do the consultation. And so that's like free. You find out if it's good for them, what they want. Yeah. And they join right from there.
Right. So if they join,
they'll pick a package.
They'll get a discount on the 1 month. So it's basically the free consultation. And I'll get up and I'll say, okay, move around your space. Show me. Whoa. There we go. We're back. So they may do jumping jacks. They move around a little bit. Can you do a bear crawl? And I'll get them moving a little bit. I'll get them active. I'll show them 1 or 2 things in a specific style, right? A big part of my life was Filipino martial arts. I love Filipino martial arts. And that is something that we have our own kids program in that works really well. And say, okay, show me how to do X, Y, Z, right? So during the free trial, I will teach a little bit, maybe 2-3 things, and see how movement, see how the space, and we'll discuss. And then if they decide we're moving forward, then we can figure out what's the plan that's going to work for them. Every time they finish a lesson, right? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is that their schedule allots for the private lesson. Then in their inbox, they have the daily training, right? So what we do is I try to leave no stone unturned, right? I don't want you to have this exciting lesson and then on Monday and then Tuesday, what am I doing? What I got to work on? None of that. Everything's broken down so you know what you're doing, and the parent knows how to take their kids through what the general terminology is, what the commands are, and I make it formal so it feels like they're in a class. All right, you bow, you start like this, you call your mom, your dad, depending on the art you're doing. If we're doing Muay Thai, you call them, Kun Kru, which is like a junior teacher kind of term, right? Just for the respect, learn a little terminology, and appreciate what you're getting, right? And then what we do is the next class, I take 5 minutes, I review. If it looks good, we move on, we add some more things, and it's very incremental, right? It's step by step, go through each pace. Sometimes it's tough, right? So if you can't get a heavy bag hung up, if you can't get the equipment, right? We make our modifications and work around it.
Okay, very cool. So they'll do the 1 month trial
Mhm.
typically after the consultation.
Right.
So is that just like a one-time payment sort of thing to see if they like it after the month?
Generally, yeah. Now, if somebody comes in, we'll make the offer. Hey, generally, let's see if we're going to do it. Let's do our month and let's get going. But if we get somebody right off chomping at the bit, we'll do a 3-month membership, or you sign up for a year, and then you have your, are we doing 1 30-minute lesson a week? Are we doing twice a week? Depending on what you choose as your payment, everything is customizable because it's easy for me. I could set it up any way I want to based on your schedule and my schedule, and we put it all together, right? So
Sure. So how much are you charging for the month? That
depending
first month?
that first month, generally speaking, if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing 1 30-minute private, right? 30-minute private once a week on a Monday. Generally, I'll say 4 in case it overlaps, and I'm not doing 5 1 month and 4 the next month. Depending on how many kids are in the class, it's probably our base program is $75, right? Just to get them started off. That's their discounted. Hey, we're going to start this. It's 30-minute lesson once a week. Then, depending on what you want to do, generally speaking, if you're meeting with me, say an hour, I try to do things in 30-minute segments based on age. So let's say I got some younger kids, 30 minutes is generally enough, even online, because then, I don't have any hair to pull out, but, getting the kids active online is a whole nother, to get them active and engaged in something and staying on something online is a whole nother conversation, right? That kind of enthusiasm and retention online can be challenging if you're not
Sure.
a little more energetic. So it could be anywhere from, like $175, $200 a month. And I have one student that I see him every other day for a 30-minute lesson, right? But that's just what he wants to do and what they can afford, right? I would say that's rare.
So how much is it? How much you charge for tuition like that every other day?
If we're doing every other day, I mean, let's see. Right now, because his family's doing it, they're doing it's $40 a lesson, so $120 a week, right? For them to come in for the 30 minutes. So
Okay, got it. And that's like for a half hour.
yep, it's for a half hour, right?
Okay, cool. It seems like pretty low. Is that because your goal is accessibility? Like you want anyone to be able to do it?
The
Like
goal
why
is
so low?
the goal is accessibility, and the goal is right now it's a matter of getting the name and the growth. Things will change as we get more of a name, but right now we're trying to get. It's not an easy model because not a lot of people are doing it, right? So, for example, you have a brick and mortar school. I can't I can't go into Facebook without finding, I'll get ads, grow your school, do this or that. That's a model that everybody understands and knows. So we're trying to build through this as we go.
Yeah, like when we did online classes, not the same as you because it's a little bit different. We did a group classes, never, but small group. I would say usually between like 3 and 10 students at a time. And sometimes we'd have another instructor on Zoom. We'd have two that could kind of help. But we charged our normal tuition, which was anywhere between 225 to $300 a month.
Okay.
And they could do as many classes as they wanted. But obviously, that's not accessible to everyone. So it really depends like what your goal is. If your goal is like accessibility and affordability for a lot more people to be able to do it, awesome, right? If your goal is private lessons or versus group classes, when you like more than the other, great. But it's interesting to hear another perspective because I wouldn't do it that way, but that's okay. That's what I would want to do. But that's what you want to do. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So it's cool to hear someone else doing it in a way that like it's going to be help different types of people.
Right. Well, part of it too is like for this one group, there's a restriction because it's through Homeschool Association. So there's an allotment of what can be paid out, right? So, for example, if in one homeschool association you've got X amount of dollars over the school year for them to pay out, and I know the family, so that it's probably different, right? I agree, right? So accessibility is a big deal for us because when we were in the homeschool association, there were a lot of people that it was a bit serving the underprivileged side of things, right? That was a bit more challenging. So they would be unable to take the classes otherwise, right? So you gotta determine what your goal sets and your mindset are. This is more of a part-time endeavor for me right now. This is not what we do full time. So
Sure.
I have that luxury in some sense to be able to reach out and try to help out people that maybe couldn't take it. And I was working for a school down here, and there was no flexibility, right? I think it was like $150 a month, and if it was too tight, well, I'm sorry, I guess we're not the school for you, right? But I remember coming from a school, and when I started in martial arts many, many years ago, it was like $30 a month, right? And I know what it did for me. So for me to be able to give that back that's where part of my motivation is for this program, right? In for the people that may not be, it might not be something they could manage. But if I didn't have martial arts, if that wasn't something that was part of my life growing up, things could have turned out a bit differently for me. Um, and that's okay. I mean, I'm all for people figuring out what they want to do with their business, how they want to run it, and what matters to them, right? And I think there's a space for all of it. Absolutely.
So are homeschool kids typically higher income or lower income? Like, where do you think the scale is? Obviously, there's going to be both, but generally.
I would, from my experience, depending on where you are, right? Um, Homeschool will happen one of two ways. Either the school systems perhaps um, aren't up to snuff, so you'll have people that want to have more of a hands-on approach to their own kids' education, and that'll range. I would say it's definitely in the middle income because you have to take care of. You're still paying for your kids' school supplies and all the other things. They're just supplying you with the coursework and whatnot. I think perhaps earlier when we started, it seemed to be more people are maybe in a lower socioeconomic scale. But I think with the education systems being as they are, when COVID hit, everything in the school system changed, right? Everything went to homeschool because the public schools weren't prepared for online courses the way they are now. But the online homeschool had existed for years before that. It was funny. The homeschool the program we were in, it almost tripled in size overnight when COVID hit hard, right? Because all the parents, the whole thing about your kid's going to sit down with the Zoom lesson and pay attention to the teacher who was 5 miles away at the public school teaching with a mask on, none of that was great. So the homeschools, online public schools, that has boomed. And it's actually maintained pretty well, right? They've done a good job in keeping that. The association we're part of now, it's much bigger than it was even a couple years ago when we started with them, because we moved down kind of at the tail end of all the COVID craziness when we came down to Florida, and it's launched pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, sharing your perspective. If someone is listening to this and like, yeah, I would love to have some sort of online component to my martial arts school, or maybe they just want to do that exclusively, or maybe they want to break into the homeschool side of things, and they just have a question for you. How do they find you?
The Synergy Center Global is our hub for everything. So you can find me, Visual Coach Krish, the Facebook and Instagram, that's out there. But that's usually the best way to get a hold of me directly, through our website. And then, you can see what other kind of offerings from the yoga perspective, the dancing, the coaching, all that kind of thing. So we
Cool.
can
What's the website? Can you spell it out for us?
Sure, it's the Synergy Center Global. So the THE Synergy SYNERGY Center CENTER Global GOLBAL.net, and that's a great way to find everything that we do and connect with us and see if there's some kind of resource that we offer that you might want to take advantage of.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on here. My name is Matthew Brenner, and if you're a martial arts school owner and you want to grow your brick and mortar school through organic strategies, that means without ads, like without depending on them, you want to grow your school through schools, daycares, and local businesses. I can show you how to add 60 students in 16 weeks. Now, it's going to require work. It's not something you just sit back and throw money on Mark Zuckerberg and pray that some good leads come in. It definitely requires work, about 4 hours a week. But if you do it, you'll transform your school completely. So if you have a question or you want to reach out to me, you can visit doubleyourdojo.com or Matthew at doubleyourdojo.com for email. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.